at realfixesrealfast.com. Today we're working on a 99 Toyota RAV4 with a 2.0 engine. The complaint is the check engine light's on. Sometimes it flashes, sometimes it doesn't, and it's running bad. With the check engine light on, the first thing we always do is a CAT scan. That stands for Computer Assisted Troubleshooting. We're going to use the computer to help us find the problem. We've already got our information in the computer, and we're going to go to Codes, Data, and look at the data. Now this displays all your PID data, and as you scroll down here you can see whatever you want. But knowing the problem that we've got a misfire, it feels like a misfire, I'm going to select just the information that I want. So I'm going to edit this list. Everything's checked, so we uncheck it all. Now I'm going to look at the misfire. Cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now the other thing I want to look at is the short term. This is a 4-cylinder, so I'm really only going to look at short term on bank 1. It's going to show it to me in a percent. Now I can only see one, so I want to look at 5 things. 4 cylinders in short term, so I'm going to go up here and pick number 6. It's going to display me 6 things. Now when we look at the scanner, cylinder number 1 is reading no misfires, cylinder number 3 no misfires, and cylinder number 4. But cylinder number 2 is reading misfires. It reads up to 99 and then it resets and counts over again. So we got a misfire on cylinder number 2. Now why did I want to look at short-term fuel trim? Because we need to know, are we going to go looking for a coil problem where there's no spark, or a fuel injector problem? If it's a coil problem, the fuel injector is squirting fuel, but that fuel was not being burnt, then coming out the tailpipe would be a rich condition. But if it's the fuel injector that's not squirting, then we're going to have a lean condition because the fuel injector is not squirting fuel. So if we look at short-term fuel trim, we can see that it's a positive number. It's above 10%. It's going above 10%, which means the computer is adding fuel. So that tells me that our cylinder number 2 is probably most likely a problem with the fuel injector. If it was a problem with the coil, then this would probably be showing that the computer is pulling fuel away. Now in trying to diagnose a problem, there's really lots of different ways we could go. So the important thing is trying to eliminate the things it's not and zero in on the things it could be as fast as possible. So we've got a misfire. It feels like a misfire. The scanner is telling us it's got a misfire. So the next thing we need to determine is it a spark misfire or is it a fuel misfire? Is it a coil or is it a fuel injector or something else? So there's some other data on the scanner that we can look at that'll help us zero in on the problem faster. Now if you were just throwing parts at it, the highest likelihood is it'd probably be a coil. Somebody could actually just throw a coil on it. If it's not the coil problem, you're still going to have your misfire. It's more trouble to go after a fuel injector. It's a lot more trouble. That's why you don't want to just throw a coil at it and see if that's it. So with us actually checking the fuel trim here and seeing that the computer is adding fuel, it's a lot more likely that we're going to have to go in as deep as the fuel injector. But we want to be smart, so we're going to check them all. Now after reviewing our information on the scanner, we've got a direction to go. We know what we're going to be looking for. But a mistake you could make is by assuming that you only have one problem. That's why you actually want to check out everything in the system. The way people these days sometimes don't keep up their maintenance, while you're diagnosing and looking everything over, sometimes you can actually discover that you've got more than one problem. So don't just assume that you only have one problem. Look for the evidence, gather your evidence, and your evidence will lead you to the problem. Now when we opened the hood on this vehicle, it had 162,000 miles on it. It's a 4-cylinder. The spark plugs and spark plug wires were original. So it was way overdue for spark plugs and wires. So our plan is to replace them anyway. It's got a 4-cylinder engine. So we've got cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4, and our misfire is right here at cylinder number 2. Now cylinder number 2 is our misfire, so that's where we're going to concentrate. We pulled out the spark plugs, put in brand new spark plugs just to make sure that wasn't a problem. Put in brand new spark plug wires. They had 162,000 miles on them. We want to make sure that that's not our problem. Once we had new plugs and wires in it, we went actually to cylinder number 2. We pulled that out, and I used my spark tester. I like to use this because you simply ground one side, you hook this on the spark plug wire, and you can adjust the gap. You can screw this in or out. Now a good healthy coil should be able to jump a spark across here at least 30 kV. If it won't jump that far, 30 kV, then that coil is weak. Now on the cylinder number 2, we had to go all the way down to 10. On cylinder number 2, we had to go all the way down to 10 kV. It would jump 10 kV, but it would not do any more than that. So that tells us that that coil is weak. So we've got new spark plugs, new spark plug wires, and we put in a new coil. This system has 2 coils. We put in the 2-3 coil because that's the one that fires. Now someone maybe say you're just throwing parts at it. We've got spark plugs and wires with 162,000 miles on it. It needs new spark plugs and wires. And if we want to assure our testing is right, we're not throwing parts at it, we're just getting our baseline up to where it needs to be. We tested the coil. The coil was very weak, so we put in a new coil. After the new coil, we've got 30 kV, so every cylinder has good spark now. Now if you go back to our scanner, we were showing that the fuel trim was lean. The computer was having to add fuel. Now think about this. If it was lean, our first assumption was that the fuel injector was the problem because it wasn't squirting fuel. Now, if the coil was a problem as well, had a weak spark, it still would show lean because it doesn't have any fuel. If the fuel injector was squirting fuel, it would have shown rich. The computer was taking away fuel. So we actually had an underlying problem there that the scanner didn't tell us. It was running lean, but it's not going to be running lean because of a bad coil. It would be running rich. The computer, it would not be burning the fuel, it would be running rich and the computer would be pulling fuel away. So we actually had 2 problems. One we could not see with the scanner, but we actually could see with our actual testing and looking for evidence. So now we've confirmed we've got good spark control, good coils, good plugs, good wires. We're still showing lean on the computer. The short-term fuel trim is still adding fuel. It's still lean. So now we need to look at this injector. Now another thing that we actually need to confirm here is compression, because compression can cause a misfire, but it probably wouldn't cause a lean condition. But anyway, we want to look for evidence. We want to rule out everything that it can't be. So we actually did a compression check, and we had 195 pounds on the cylinders. So we're still leaning towards a fuel injector problem. All the evidence is pointing that direction. Now, the injectors are kind of hard to get to. They're recessed down in here, but the next thing we want to know is whether or not that injector is actually being commanded on. So we're going to unhook the injector connector and pull the plug in up here where we can get to it. And then we're going to hook up the Noid light. Now the Noid light is going to tell us if the computer is commanding that injector on. So we hook up the Noid light, and then we start the engine. Now you can see this Noid light is flashing. So that is telling us that the computer is controlling that injector, or at least trying to. It's sending the commandment to fire. The next thing to do then is plug this injector back in. Now at this point the injectors are recessed down there. That's where this comes in real handy. It's got this long probe on it. And this is actually going to pick up the sonic vibrations of that injector pintle actually striking inside there. It's just like this. If you look at when I tap it, the light clicks every time. So I'm going to put this down on cylinder number 1 first on the fuel injector. If you look at the light, you can see that that's telling me that injector is actually opening and closing. It's mechanically working. If I go to number 3, Same thing. Go to number 4, same thing. But now if I go back to number 2, it's not picking up any kind of vibration. Now this is very handy to show you on the video, but if you don't have one of these and you've got a stethoscope, you can do the same thing. Put your stethoscope down, actually touch the base of the injector, and you should be able to hear it tapping in there, a thumping sound. Actually compare all your good ones first and then go to the suspicious bad one, and if you clearly cannot hear any kind of a tapping noise and you're touching at the base of the injector, that's telling you that injector is not mechanically working. So now all of our evidence is pointing at the fact that we've got an injector that is not squirting fuel, the engine's running lean, and it's causing it to misfire. So the next thing to do is replace that injector. Okay, we've taken the injector rail off. We're going to take this injector out, put it on the bench and test it. Okay, we've got the 4 injectors out now on the bench, and they're in numbered order. Number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now number 2 was our problem, so we're going to take that out and ohm it. Now we're going to use a multimeter and just ohm it. As you can see right now, we're reading out of limits. So we're going to touch the contacts. We'll go back and we're reading 2.21 kiloohms. Notice that that's kiloohms. 2.21, 22. Now we're going to go to one of the other injectors. We took all 4 out. So this was an injector that was not a problem. Go across that and we're reading 13 ohms. The other one was 2.22 kiloohms. Now we're going to go to the brand new injector. We touch the contacts across that, and we're reading, if we can make sure we get good contact there, 13.7 ohms. 13.7 ohms. Now let's go back to the bad one more time. Touch the contacts there, 2.22 kiloohms. So we got more evidence that this injector was clearly bad, had way too much resistance in it. Now when you're pulling these fuel injectors out, they all have to come out because you're taking them out of the fuel rail. So since you have to take them all out, you need to replace these top 2 O-rings. They come with the injector, or you may have to order them separate. Now here's the new injector. You put your seals on there, and this one's ready to go. Now you can take your chances and reuse them on the other injectors, but I would not advise it. Since you've pulled them all 4 out, go ahead and order 4 kits or 3 kits, and be sure and change the seals on the other 3 injectors as well. And then you're ready to put it back in. We replaced the fuel injector. It's time to start it. We'll brake torque it. No more misfire. Looks like our evidence showed us what the problem was.